We are talking all things Dutch Grand Prix, Circuit Zandvoort. This is Turn 1. We're your host,
And
Thomas.
Jeremiah.
Guys, you know how these go. We're going to go look back in time a little bit at last year, the 2023 Dutch Grand Prix. One of the most epic races I think you and I have ever watched live. I actually rated this my number one race of last year, and I think you had it as an honorable mention. You might have given it to Japan
That's my
or
least
something else.
favorite race of the season.
Well, I don't know about that. But we're going to go back in time a little bit. We're, of course, going to look at the track, the layout, the atmosphere, a little bit of the history of the track and the surrounding areas, and then we will dive into predictions. But Jeremiah, take it away with last year's race.
Okay, I'm going to cover all 186 overtakes. No, but 186 overtakes is the main thing to take away from this. It's the most overtakes in a Grand Prix ever. The track was insane, so they start out on slicks, even though it's slightly sprinkling on some parts of the track. Other parts of the track, it's completely wet. So you're going around for one lap on slicks and then immediately dive bombing the pits. Fernando Alonso takes full advantage of the situation, jumps 3 spots. Valtteri Bottas jumps 8 spots from the back. An amazing start to this race. Like I said, dive bomb the pits. Everybody's going in. Lando stays out as long as he can. Always a terrible choice, always a terrible decision, and it ends up biting him in the butt. But this race was crazy because after we go to the inters, you have the rain, they're driving on it, then it dries up, then they go back to the slicks, right? But then that's not the end of the story because then the rain comes again. So they go back to the inters, and this time on the inters, it was really wet, and the inters weren't enough to hold out as people go slipping and sliding all over this track. We see Zhou Guan Yu running off, Sergio Perez running off. Earlier in the race, of course, Logan Sargent, 14 laps in, slaps a wall. But that's not the main point of the story. Zhou Guan Yu is the main point of this story. No, but he does go 62 laps, and he does end up slapping a wall. Unfortunately, he hits it pretty dang hard. Everybody else is pretty much able to save it and get back onto the track. The track ends up drying up. They move back to the slicks, and then you have a gun for the end of this race with Max Verstappen, of course, taking the win. Fernando Alonso holding on to that second spot throughout the entire race as he multiple times had to fight his way back up to the top. And Pierre Gasly of Alpine is going to take that third spot on the podium. And it was actually a pretty close race. One, because Fernando Alonso finished 3.7 seconds behind Max, and typically people were finishing, 20, 30 seconds behind Max. And Pierre Gasly was only 3 seconds behind Fernando. Now, this is also an Aston Martin that is after the summer break, not a beginning of the season Aston Martin where we saw them regularly getting podiums. So this was a fight for Fernando and a great finish for Fernando. And just because it's funny, Lance Stroll finished 11th and Fernando Alonso in the same car finished second. That is your recap of the 2023 Dutch Grand Prix.
The reason that it was epic was the weather, and this is probably the best track to have that kind of weather thrown at you mid-race. And I say mid-race, it was lap 3 when chaos broke out. Like, if the race had delayed its start by 5 minutes, none of this would have happened because all the teams would have changed their strategy. They wouldn't have gone out on slicks like they did. It was just complete chaos on lap 3 that resulted in drivers averaging 5 or 6 pit stops throughout the day.
Oh yeah,
and
6 across the board, 5s. You see 7 from Lance Stroll, which is hilarious. But Alex Albon only doing 4, which back last year he was the tire whisperer, so that was impressive on his part.
This was the kind of classic case of a perfect strategical F1 race where all the simulations that you've done pre-race, everything that happened in qualifying, the qualifying order, all of it gets thrown out. And it comes down to how can you react on race day to the situations you're given. And, if you're somebody that's new to Formula One, you're kind of wondering like, man, them stopping for 20 or 30 seconds to change tires takes away so much of their time. But in a race like this, where you have the rain on and off and starting and stopping and all that, it is clearly worth it because you have these guys stopping 5, 6, 7 times and running faster laps than everybody. So you had a couple of guys that tried to wait out the rain that didn't work so well for them. You had other guys that jumped too early and they lost a lot of spots. And then you have guys like Pierre Gasly that jumped from 12 to 3. And then you have guys like, again, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, which, started out the season pretty dominant, kind of, second to the Red Bull last year, fell off mid-season, boom, right back into second place in this race because they just got Fernando's strategy right and he was able to navigate the car through that. Looking at the records that race set, so Jeremiah touched on it. 186 total overtakes. Do you know how much the previous record was for?
32.
Not quite.
It's a
So
complete shot in the dark.
2016, your favorite track layout, I think, the Chinese Grand Prix had 170
All
overtakes.
right.
Now, here's a record that I don't think you know about. The Dutch Grand Prix last year also set the record for most overtakes in a single lap. This was lap 3 when the chaos broke out. Take a venture to guess how many overtakes happened on lap 3.
186 overtakes in
All the rain coming
total.
down, people slipping and sliding, flying off
20
track.
cars on the track.
2.5 miles.
I don't know, man. Let's go 32. Why not? Go ballsy.
You know what? Actually, not a bad guess. I thought you would guess a lot lower. 63.
Jeez.
So in the previous record was 45. So they put an 18 spot on the previous record. And 63 overtakes would be more than 95% of the Grand Prix throughout a year, in a single race. Like
Absolutely.
you don't have 70 overtakes every single race weekend. It just doesn't happen. And that happened in one lap last year. So I loved everything about that. Okay, as we look at moving to the track, anything you want to hit from last year, or are you ready to move?
I do want to make one more point on that. It's hilarious to me that in one lap of Zandvoort, you can see more action than the entirety of 5 years worth of Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, although, you know what? I would be interested, when Monaco gets hit with the rain, when people go to pit, and somebody does a lap extra, it does count as an overtake. So I do wonder if Monaco's racked up some overtaking years. It doesn't look like overtaking on the track because it's all like pit stop
Sure.
overtakes. But I bet they've gotten up there actually a couple times. It just doesn't look like it. Whereas Zandvoort, it was just madness on the track.
That's great.
Okay, so Circuit Zandvoort is in a little town called Zandvoort there in the Netherlands, thus the Dutch Grand Prix. This is a suburb of Amsterdam. One of our earliest listeners had sent us a lot of information about this track last year because she actually lives out there. And it's a small little town. It's like about 20-minute train ride from Amsterdam. But it just feels like the whole vibe of this city is like relaxed, biking town, a bunch of seafood restaurants, and then once a year, the best drivers in the world come to the beachy, sandy shores of Zandvoort to duke it out on this wild-looking track. It's probably got the most interesting shape, maybe next to Spa of all the F1 tracks. It's not an oval in any way. It doesn't follow any rhyme or rhythm or pattern or anything. It just makes a crazy looking T shape with all these little ins and outs. And it's the only current track with bank turns, I think. Because all the other tracks that had bank turns previously were removed because of their dangerous
I wonder if
their
that's
danger.
true.
The issue that other tracks had with bank turns, like Monza, was that the speed was just way too high, and so you had these drivers pushing the boundaries. Zandvoort is a more condensed track with a lot of turns, so drivers can't really build up enough speed. So the banking actually helps them build up that speed as they're going around these turns, and it makes the track a little bit faster than it would be otherwise. I want your thoughts, but just my initial takes. Aside from it being one of the most unique designs, it's also one of my most favorite tracks for the bank turns, for the sandy runoffs. Of course, right now we have the Max Verstappen effect of all of the Dutch fans lighting the crowd up in orange and the smoke. Every year that we've watched this race, I've had a blast.
I love that you have a little bit of everything in this. I mean, you have long straights as you're going from 14 down to 1. You have tight hairpin-esque areas like, your turn 3s, your turn 12s. You have long winding turns such as, 13 and 14 where it kind of does a one long one. You have these, it's got a little bit of everything. It even has it feels like it's a staple on a lot of different F1 tracks to have some sort of S's-esque area where you're kind of doing a left-right motion. And as you're looking at 4, 5, and 6, it kind of does that. I love seeing any F1 track where it has multiple different variables and it's not just one similar a similar pattern that it kind of follows throughout the entirety of the track. This one has everything. Like I said, 2 DRS detection zones, which means that we're going to get a lot of passing opportunities, which I mean, we already know that because it's Zandvoort and it heads the record. But regardless of the rain, we're still going to see a great race. Even if there is no rain, even if there is no variables such as the weather playing into effect here, we do see a lot of overtaking at Zandvoort on a regular year. So I think it's going to be a fun race. And you're right, as far as the layout of the track, it's weird. It looks like Spa is also one of those weird tracks that comes to mind where it's just random looking. It's like as if you had a kindergartner just say, hey, draw something. And then you're like, Zandvoort, there it is.
And I don't know too much about how they made that layout, but when you're watching the race, there's a lot of those little like sand dunes and hills. So I wonder if they kind of went with the natural contours of what the beach was getting, because this is essentially on a beach, like it's right next to the water and the ocean. So I wonder if they went with the natural contours or if they just thought up a really weird design. I think this track gives us one of the best visuals of the season, and I feel like it's underrated. So imagine you're watching the race and it's the last lap, and whoever is the leader, maybe they're being chased, maybe they're not. They're coming around that last turn. I love that long camera look from like where the start finish line would be, or where the pits would be, down towards turn 14. There's like these walls or barricades up, and there's also a sandy hill to the left, and you just see the driver shoot out of turn 14 on that bank turn. And I think that is a great visual because you can't see the car anywhere before that. And then suddenly, boom, F1 car riding a bank turn coming around at full speed, because they're going full speed around, or not at 13, but at 14, they're up to full speed because it's that bank turn. So I absolutely love the visuals that this track gives. Fun fact. Do you know who owns this track?
No.
There's no way you know this.
Not a chance. Wait, Ryan Reynolds.
No,
it's worth a shot.
Maybe next year. This is actually owned by a company owned by the Prince of the Netherlands, who is cousins to the King of the Netherlands.
Okay.
So it's owned by the Dutch royal family. Just a little fun fact.
I got a fun fact for you.
Okay.
The track was originally designed for motorcycle racing in particular. Thought that was pretty interesting. I looked at an article earlier so that I could kind of figure out why the track looks the way that it does. And one of the first things that you take away is the track was originally designed by members of the Royal Dutch Motorcycle Association with help from Sammy Davis, who won the 1927 24 Hours of Le Mans, but it was built for motorcycle racing, and it's taken on a bunch of different shapes throughout its years and ended up with what you have now, a mixture of public roads and just winding roads that go over the sand dunes.
That might add to why it's kind of a condensed track for what F1 standards would be, because of course those moto guys can do a lot tighter actions than the F1 cars can. Especially the modern moto guys. They're fully leaning into those turns. Okay, let's look at where we are right now in the season. We'll link our last couple of videos. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the track from last year where the famous corner, Tarzan Corner, is just a dude that didn't want to give up a plot of his land?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I remember that story. That's hilarious.
We'll link at some point in this video. I'll put it down in the description too. Our preview last year, where we go into a lot more of the history of the town, and we go into the Tarzan Corner. I think we looked at the history of like 3 or 4 of those turns, because yes, one of them is named after a guy that just didn't want to give it up, basically. All right, so we looked over the last 2 weeks at kind of where we are in the season. Of course, you have the driver market chaos, which hasn't really settled at all, which is fine. You always kind of look forward to a busy summer break, but that just means we're going to have some action as we approach the end of the season, because there are 4 or 5 seats that have to be announced. And again, usually that happens in the summer break, but not this year. So maybe something gets announced this weekend while all the drivers are there. Maybe it's held off for the next couple of races. But right now, you've got Max Verstappen sitting in that one spot, followed by Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. Norris and Leclerc are pretty close, within about 22 points of each other. Max has quite the cushion at about 78 points. But with how the other teams are performing, that could be narrowed. The bigger race, as we talked about over the last couple of weeks, specifically last week, is kind of McLaren's rise into a really good position against Red Bull, especially with the results Checo is getting. Ferrari and Mercedes, of course, are well, Ferrari's right there. Mercedes is a little bit further down, but Mercedes has won 3 of the last 4 Grand Prix. Even with George getting DQ'd, Lewis gets the win, so didn't matter. I don't know, man. I think we're set up for a great back half of the season. Without giving any actual prediction, of course, this is one of Max's 3 home races, and this is probably the biggest home race for him. So he usually does well, but I don't know. Is weather going to throw a wrench into things? Is he going to have a strategical error? Is he going to get slide off the track in qualifying? These are things that we don't know, but we can predict wildly what will happen.
And we will.
Okay, you got any notes on the current standings, or do you want to jump into predictions?
No, let's go ahead and tackle the predictions because I'm going to have some fun with this.
Give me your top 3.
Top 3. I'm going to go ahead and say that Max wins his home Grand Prix, probably his favorite track of them all. For the second and third spot, which are the ones that are more important, I'm going to go ahead and give the second spot to Lando Norris. And third spot, give me Sir Lewis Hamilton to get the final spot on that podium. I'll let you do yours, and then I'm going to throw out some stuff that's probably not going to happen, but would be fun to see.
Okay, so you said Max, Lando, Lewis.
Yes.
Okay. Give me Max to win. It's just he's still Max Verstappen. This is where he's going to try to go all out in terms of strategy. He's going to make sure his team is ready to go. Like, he's going to be checking everything for this week. He's coming off the summer break, so he's relaxed and refreshed. He's going to be peak Max Verstappen. Give me him in the 1 spot. I'm going to go kind of off script for number 2 and 3 here. I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. Give me Oscar Piastri in the number 2 spot.
Okay.
And don't give me Lando in the 3rd spot. Oh, no. Give me George Russell in the 3rd spot. He is ticked after having his victory in Spa stripped away for cheating and trying to cover it up. He was devastated. He's now on a revenge tour. George Russell's getting his 15 points or whatever this weekend.
So we both
in the Netherlands.
have a McLaren and a Mercedes. We just picked opposite drivers.
I picked the 2 drivers and you picked the 1 drivers.
Okay. All right.
Neither of us have Checo, though, so Red Bull's still falling down in those standings.
All right, let's have some more fun with this. Give me Max Verstappen to beat Lando Norris by 3.5 seconds exactly.
If that pays off somehow.
Give me Fernando Alonso to finish in 5th in this race.
I don't know about that one.
Come on. Give me Esteban Ocon to DNF. And give me Logan Sargent finishing 15th.
Do you even remember all the predictions you just made?
Yeah. They're all
run them through again.
Run through them again.
Run through them again.
Give me Max Verstappen beating Lando by 3.5 seconds exactly. Give me Fernando Alonso to finish in 5th. Give me Esteban Ocon to DNF, and give me Logan Sargent to finish 15th.
Who gets the fastest lap?
Ooh. Give me Lando. Give me Lando Norris to get the fastest lap as he's chasing down Max at the end.
Okay, I have 1 wild card prediction for you, and mine might be crazier than all of yours combined.
Okay.
Give me the Kick Steak Sauber team to claim their first points of the 2024 season.
Joe or Valtteri? Are you just going to leave it at steak?
Let's be crazy. Give me Zhou Guan Yu.
Oh my God.
I'm going to hate if that ruins the prediction.
For play it safe, though, let's say Steak gets their first points of the season.
Yes. Let's just see. I mean, who knows? This is, again, one of those kind of wild card weekends where the track is different than everything else they'll see in the season. If there's weather, I'm not sure if there will be, but if there's weather, that throws a wrench into things. This is also the time of year where cars start to break down and power units start to go out, gearboxes start to go out. Who knows what we're going to see this weekend? Guys, let us know in the comments, do you agree with all of Jeremiah's wildcard predictions?
Guys, if you think we're completely wrong on this, Max DNS on lap 2, Lando Norris comes in 4th. Sir Lewis Hamilton finishes, I don't know, let's say 16th. And we finally get a new winner again in this season. Zhou Guanyu takes the win.
I thought you were going to say, and Fernando Alonso retires on track mid-race.
He just hops out the car. I'm done.
Hops out the fence and runs into the ocean.
Just starts swimming out to nowhere.
Crofty comes on, and that was the last time we ever saw Fernando Alonso.
Be great.
And then Sebastian Vettel hops in the car and takes off.
If anybody was going to replace Fernando, though, that sounds about right.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you like our content. Hit the like, leave us a comment, and we will see you after the Dutch Grand Prix.
Bye, guys.